stories are the type, of course, I'll do exactly as you tell me. Episode 3. My manager told me I must post in the team chat. Fine, but not in English. I've been working remotely for almost 6 years. Recently, I joined a new company with a freshly promoted team lead. You know that vibe when someone just got a shiny new badge and suddenly wants to flex every drop of power? Yeah, that was him. My role is purely client-facing. The team lead doesn't even join those conversations, so honestly, I had little reason to chat with him day to day. That's why I only dropped messages in the team chat when necessary, or if someone tagged me directly. Then came my third monthly performance review. My numbers were flawless, but the team lead lowered my score because I wasn't active enough in the team chat. According to him, saying good morning and participating in small talk was mandatory for showing team spirit. I pointed out that it wasn't listed in the metrics, never had been, and in 6 years of remote work, no one had ever penalized me for not spamming hello gifs. His response? As long as you're on my team, you must post at least a hi or bye. And that's when I activated Malicious Compliance protocol. From that day on, I started greeting the team every morning and saying goodbye every evening, but in a different language each day. Monday, Korean, Tuesday, Spanish, Wednesday, Greek. You get the picture. At first, my lead thought it was funny. Then the whole team joined in using Google Translate. Let's just say things got weird. Messages didn't always translate well. Some even triggered our system's content filters. Eventually, the general manager, aka my lead's boss, noticed and asked what was going on. Suddenly, Mr. Team Spirit wasn't laughing anymore. He DM'd me begging, please just say hi in English or else I'll escalate this to the GM. Well, it's been 3 weeks. I'm still greeting everyone in whatever language I feel like. Still waiting for that call from the general manager. They told him he couldn't plant sunflowers. He planted something even dumber. A couple of years back, a client walks into our office with a contract from his HOA. Before I even dig into the paperwork, I ask him what's up. He goes, they're making me dig up my sunflowers. Yep, dude had planted a whole row of massive sunflowers like 5 feet tall along the front of his house. The HOA told him they were banned under the contract. He wanted me to confirm if that was true. I warned him right away. Careful, this could take hours and lawyer hours are expensive. Your sunflowers could turn into golden sunflowers real quick. He didn't care. Said, this is America. I have the right to plant sunflowers, dang it. So I took a retainer and started digging through the contract. Sure enough, there it was, a ridiculously long list of plants you could and couldn't grow. Apples, bananas, cauliflower, dill. Yep, sunflowers were on the banned list. But here's where it gets funny. They forgot to list corn. Little legal nuance. If a rule says no dogs, it usually means no dogs at all. But if it says no poodles, no retrievers, no chihuahuas, then technically every other breed is fair game. Lazy lawyers sometimes create these bloated lists to charge extra billable hours. And that's exactly what happened here. So I break the bad news. Yep, no sunflowers. But hey, whoever drafted this contract scammed the HOA. It's garbage quality. They forgot corn. So technically you could plant corn all day long. I figured he'd be upset. Instead, he was thrilled. Couple weeks later, he shows up with a photo. His entire yard lined with giant corn stalks. When the HOA came knocking, he told them, sorry, rules are rules. Contract says no sunflowers, but corn is fine. Enjoy my corn maze, folks. Eventually, after some heated negotiations, they agreed to let him keep the sunflowers in exchange for removing the corn. Now, his house is surrounded by a literal fortress of sunflowers. And yes, he's still my client. My boss embarrassed herself thanks to me. Right after college, I started working as a recruiter in a staffing agency. Our manager was a hardcore micromanagement enthusiast who wanted to control literally everything. She insisted on reviewing every single email employees wrote to clients and demanded to be copied on every outgoing message. One day, a coworker received positive feedback from an employer about an email he had written. Immediately, our boss hit reply all, claimed all the credit, and announced that she personally supervised every outgoing email. At the next meeting, she doubled down, saying that all praise should go to her since she proofread everything before it gets sent out. The funny part, this lady had zero talent for writing. Her grammar was shaky, her punctuation was worse, and I often caught her making mistakes in sentence structure. But I stayed quiet. Then came the perfect storm. I had drafted an email to a very important employer who invested a lot of money in our agency. I described how the candidate was a great fit for the role because of their previous experience. Miss Micromanager came to me and said, "Everything looks fine, but instead of previous experience, you should say past experience." I explained that this was incorrect, but she insisted, claiming she knew the difference perfectly well. I wasn't in the mood to argue, so I followed her orders, CCing her on the email as usual. The employer replied and politely corrected us, saying that as someone hiring people to work with written materials, he wanted to point out the proper term was previous experience. That's when I activated full malicious compliance mode. I hit reply all, thanked him for the correction, and explained that my manager really valued feedback. I made sure to add that it was she who insisted on using past experience, since she always checked every outgoing email. The very next day, she announced she no longer wanted to review client emails and asked not to be CC'd anymore. Chauvinist idiot ended up in jail for thinking a woman can't fix computers. This happened back in 2006. I worked at a big retail store with an IT help desk. We called it the Geek Wrangler, where people brought their computers for repair. The store was in Columbus, Georgia, just across the bridge from Phoenix City, Alabama. Location matters because we had lots of military customers from Fort Benning, mostly great people, but others from Alabama, let's just say, not all of them were friendly towards certain genders or skin colors. I'm a 15.5 centimeter woman, about 54 kilograms, basically a hobbit and one of the top techs on the team. New hires came to me when they couldn't solve a problem. Our team was awesome. The general manager was great and my department lead was genuinely respectful. We often went out for drinks after work, one of the best jobs I ever had, despite being retail. One day I was on the desk, taking clients, diagnosing issues, giving estimates, when in walks Joe. Alcoholic tea, worn jeans, Confederate flag cap, looking rough. I try not to judge by appearances, and some clients with the same vibe turned out very nice. But Joe, red flag. He plots a desktop on the counter like a grenade. "I need this fixed." I politely say, "Sure, sir, let me take a look and I'll tell you if I can." Joe interrupts, glaring. "Nope, ain't letting some chick touch my computer. Call the manager." Bingo. That's when malicious compliance kicked in. I sweetly go, "Of course, sir, I'll call someone right now." My department lead, Mike, not the GM, nearly 2 meters tall, 130 kilograms, gentle giant, was in the back working on a repair. I walk over and say with the sneakiest grin, "Hey Mike, client's asking for you." Mike's face lights up, walks over, and Joe loses it. This guy goes on a tirade I'll never forget, spitting, screaming, every offensive term you can imagine. Security tried to calm him, but our guards were also black. Joe keeps escalating, threats flying everywhere. Finally, police were called. 2 black officers arrived. The general manager and I were basically the only white people there besides Joe. Watching him get cuffed while yelling like a maniac, best moment of my week. Justice served. Malicious compliance in action. My neighbor tried to use city inspectors as a weapon against me. It backfired. The lady who lived behind my house was, let's just say, a walking boss-level headache. I realized this the very day I moved in. We closed on the house in late December. By early spring, she was demanding I spend $10,000 building a drainage system so rainwater wouldn't flow into her yard. Thing is, my lot has been slightly higher than hers for over 60 years. I refused, but politely suggested that if she wanted it so badly, she could pay for it herself. She declined, of course. A couple weeks later, she filed a complaint with the city about my outdoor light not having a protective cover. An inspector showed up right when we had guests over, which was awkward, but he just rolled his eyes, said everyone knew her, told me not to worry, and asked me to fix it. No fines, no drama. A week later, he came back, checked, everything was fine, case closed. Fast forward to Father's Day. We threw a little surprise birthday party for my father-in-law turning 80. Just a small speaker playing music. The next Friday, the same inspector called me again. Guess who filed another complaint? Yup. He told me not to worry, but suggested that if I ever wanted to avoid problems during a party, I could apply for a noise permit ahead of time. So when I overheard her on the phone inviting people to a BBQ and giving the exact date and time, guess what I did Monday morning? Went straight to City Hall and filed for a permit for that exact day and hour. Approved. On the evening of her party, when her guests started to arrive, I cranked up Greek church hymns from the early 1900s. My grandparents used to blast those and torture me and my cousins, so I knew just how infinitely annoying they could sound at full volume. Within minutes, she was pounding on my door and spamming my doorbell like it was a rage-clicking speedrun. I didn't answer. My wife, her neighbors, the chill ones, and I were already at a bar enjoying drinks. Later, another complaint was filed. Same inspector. He told her I had a valid permit and there was nothing she could do. Sometimes malicious compliance tastes better than barbecue. If I can't drink here, neither can my friends. Back when I was about 25, I worked as a waiter in my hometown restaurant. The pay was decent and the crew was awesome. After shifts, a few of us usually grabbed a couple of cold ones at the bar. Why go anywhere else when the bar was literally right there? We tipped well, never caused problems, it was chill. Then one day, out of nowhere, the owner decided that staff could no longer drink at our own bar. Sure, I get it, that's a pretty normal rule in many places. He was within his rights. But the timing was weird, so I asked my manager if something happened. He shrugged and said, "Nope, boss man is just being a power-tripping potato. No reason, just vibes." Okay, fine. His place, his rules. But he wasn't ready for the Thursday effect and my friends. See, my buddies played in a local band. Thursday nights were rehearsal nights. I'd finish my shift and they'd swing by to hang out and drink with me at the bar. They'd bring girlfriends, friends of friends, randoms. Basically, they turned Thursday into a mini Friday, and they could seriously put away drinks. The tips, generous. So when I told them I couldn't drink there anymore, they got as salty as I was. My buddy Bob goes, "Wait, so instead of hanging out here, we have to leave so you can join us later?" "Nah, dude, we'll just meet at another bar right away. You come after work." Logical. And guess what? The other bar was literally around the corner. Next Thursday, I clock out around 9 p.m. Manager looks at the empty bar and asks, "Hey, are your friends coming tonight?" By now, they're usually 3 beers deep. Me? Actually, they're already on round 4 at the bar around the corner because that's where I'm headed to. Manager.exe stopped working. I left, joined my crew, and we had an amazing night. Only downside, the poor Thursday bartender at my place lost a big chunk of her tips. But that was on the boss, not me. A couple of weeks later, the owner noticed revenue tanking on Thursdays. He reversed the rule and allowed us to drink again. But by then, it was too late. We'd discovered that the other bar had cheaper prices, great vibes, and we'd already become buddies with the staff there. So yeah, thanks boss. You didn't just ban staff drinks, you gave us a new home bar. You must give detailed medical info to get paid time off. Sure about that? A few years ago, I worked in an office with some truly garbo rules. One of them was, yes, we could take paid time off for almost anything, but management demanded a detailed explanation of why before approving it. So coworkers repeatedly got turned down with lines like, "The deadline on the current project is more important than your niece's birthday," or "Do you really need to attend your mother's cousin's funeral?" You know, classic not urgent sounding stuff. The atmosphere was so toxic, some people quit rather than be held hostage for a day off. To make matters worse, a PTO request had to be signed by both the department head and HR, which created absurd stalemates. One side, the other refused. And the HR manager was a total jerkface. Realistically, you only got guaranteed approval for court summonses or true medical emergencies. And even then, they demanded personal details, even for super sensitive legal or health issues. I don't think that's legal, but sadly it wasn't uncommon where I lived, Texas. The department head was another power-drunk slimeball. Let's call him Dep Tyrant, and HR was HR Nightmare. We all hated them. Now the actual malicious compliance. I had an urgent psychiatry appointment. My anti-anxiety and PTSD meds had stopped working and I was really struggling. I booked the earliest slot I could. The office could spare me for a couple hours, no problem. I submitted a PTO request to the Jerkface and the Goblin Lord. Since the visit was extremely personal, I gave only minimal details. They rejected it. Both of them wrote back saying company policy required full details of my medical visit. Depart Tyrant even summoned me into his office to scold me for the too brief request. "You know the rules, why are you wasting my time?" I was furious, but I sat at my desk boiling and realized I could get payback simply by following their own dumb rules to the letter. So I asked, "Do you really want the full details of my visit?" They both responded, "Yes, the policy requires details." We exchanged a few more messages until I had it in writing. Then I complied. Fully. I submitted a new PTO request with the complete set of details they demanded. An urgent psych appointment, the need to be seen ASAP, because I'd been having self-harm thoughts, my PTSD from a very bad foster home history, what my foster parent allegedly did, how I'd suffered and turned to no substances to cope, and how, as a teen, I ended up in the hospital after a very dark ghost myself episode. I screenshotted everything and forwarded the request to several top execs, explaining the previous request had been deemed too brief, and I wanted to ensure this one met corporate standards. 4 minutes later, green, approved. I went about my day relieved and oddly satisfied. Curiously, neither Dep Tyrant nor HR Nightmare ever came out of their offices. Next morning at 8, I was summoned to the VP's office. There was another senior manager and a lawyerish woman from legal. The VP, a polite but slightly out-of-touch older guy, asked me to explain the awful email they'd all seen. I explained. I needed time for a very personal medical appointment. My first request was rejected as too brief. Debt Tyrant had yelled at me, so I resubmitted with the level of detail they'd asked for and copied leadership to make sure it met corporate standards. Yes, it was all true. They could check HR records. The VP asked a couple quick questions, apologized for the hassle, credited me extra paid days off for what I'd been through, and said the company would revisit its PTO approval process. They sent me back to my desk. That same morning, I got written apologies from the Goblin Lord and the Jerkface. The terrified Debt Tyrant even brought them to me in person. I suspect legal made him. After that, both did everything they could to avoid me, which suited me fine. When we had to cross paths, they mumbled and looked like they wanted to vanish. Consequences. Later that day, the whole company got an important email announcing a policy change. Medical and other delicate reasons no longer required invasive detailed explanations. Bonus, an HR coworker I chatted with about crochet by the water cooler showed me an internal HR memo from HR Nightmare telling everyone to approve any of my PTO requests immediately and without questions. I guess I was put on special watch. I could have taken a full month of paid leave after that, but I didn't push it. 6 months later, I left for a much healthier, higher paid job. The appointment went well. I started attending a trauma support group, met my partner, and managed to reduce one of my medications. That's it for today's tales of malicious compliance. Thanks for reading, and remember, sometimes following the rules too well is the best revenge. Drop your own stories in the comments. Let's keep the chaos and cleverness alive. Stay safe, tip your baristas, and keep being awesome.